Murder's the easy part. Covering it up, not so much. Welcome to Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski.
I'm Tony Brueski, and today we're going deep into the tangled web of the Gilgo Beach murders, a case that's haunted Suffolk County for over a decade. The latest chapter? A desperate plea from the district attorney's office running on fumes and asking the federal government to free up $13 million just to keep the case moving. That's right. Prosecuting one of the most infamous alleged serial killers in recent history is hitting a wall made of dollars. Rex Heuermann, a seemingly ordinary architect from Massapequa Park, a father, a husband, a man leading a double life, or so the charges allege. Heuermann stands accused of murdering at least 6 women, all tied to the Gilgo Beach case, their bodies abandoned along a lonely stretch of Ocean Parkway, each with their own story, each with their own tragic end. And now the prosecution says more bodies may still be connected to him. But can they bring the full force of the law down on him without the resources to make it happen? There's a peculiar challenge here, one that raises deeper questions. What happens when justice hangs in the balance, not because of lack of evidence, but because of lack of funding? And in a case so high profile, where does the pressure of public opinion and political maneuvering fit into all of this? Could the system, already overwhelmed, falter at the finish line, leaving victims' families with more questions than answers? And what about Heuermann himself? A man described by prosecutors as leading an ogre-like existence, haunting the lives of his victims while walking unnoticed among his neighbors and colleagues. What was driving him? Was he building a facade of normalcy to cover something darker, something primal? If these accusations are true, what was happening inside his mind during those long stretches between murders? Was it satisfaction? Or was it a compulsion that demanded more victims, more lives lost along Ocean Parkway? These are the questions we'll tackle as we delve deeper into the lives of the victims, the investigation that spanned decades, and the roadblocks now threatening to derail one of the most critical trials Suffolk County has ever faced. Stay with us, because there's more to this story. A lot more. It all began along the windswept dunes of Ocean Parkway in December 2010. Law enforcement officers were searching for Shannon Gilbert, a missing escort, when instead they stumbled upon a discovery that would unearth a horror no one anticipated. 4 bodies, all wrapped in burlap, were found scattered across the brush. As days turned into months, more remains surfaced, 10 victims in total, each adding a new layer to a mystery that haunted Suffolk County for over a decade. Among the victims, a pattern emerged: petite sex workers with strikingly similar features, all last seen alive before meeting a tragic end along Long Island shores. But mixed within these findings were anomalies: the bones of a 2-year-old girl, an Asian male, and unidentified remains that left investigators baffled. Enter Rex Heuermann, an architect from Massapequa Park who lived quietly in a modest home with his wife and children, just a few miles from where the bodies had been found. His arrest in July 2023 sent shockwaves through the community. For years, residents assumed a shadowy monster had evaded capture. Instead, authorities revealed the alleged killer was hiding in plain sight, a married father and professional commuting to his Manhattan office by day and, according to prosecutors, prowling the streets by night. Yet, there's far more to this story than just the accusations. It is a tale of a police investigation gone cold, only to be reignited with new leadership and forensic advancements. A discarded pizza crust, surveillance of burner phones, and eerie internet searches pieced together a portrait of a man authorities say lived a double life. But even with Heuermann's arrest, uncertainty hangs heavy. Was he truly responsible for all the victims, or could other killers be lurking, their crimes lost among the chaos? And now, a new battle emerges, not in the back alleys of Long Island, but in the courtroom. District Attorney Ray Tierney is facing a challenge that could make or break this case. Money. The DA's office is scrambling, running out of cash to sustain the prosecution. Evidence meticulously collected over years must now be turned over to the defense under tight deadlines. But $13 million in necessary funds remains frozen under a federal investigation into the previous administration, forcing Tierney into a desperate plea for assistance. "I will beg them if I have to," Tierney admitted, referencing the Department of Justice's control over the funds. Without that money, the prosecution could falter before it truly begins. Meanwhile, Heuermann's defense attorney, Michael Brown, is not wasting any time. He's already hinted that finding an impartial jury will be a Herculean task, even joking that they may need to move the trial to Mars. Heuermann's legal team has also requested that the cases be separated, suggesting that the alleged victims connected to the initial 2023 charges be tried separately from the later accusations involving additional bodies discovered along Ocean Parkway. But this trial is about more than logistics. It's about stories. Stories that investigators say date back to 1993, when some of the first victims were reported missing. Each victim's life tells a different narrative, but all share an eerie similarity. Sudden disappearances, families left in torment, and a killer who seemed to slip through every crack. Among the earliest victims was Melissa Barthelemy, whose disappearance in July 2009 sent her family spiraling. Amber Costello vanished next, lured out of her West Babylon home by a client in September 2010. Megan Waterman, a young mother, disappeared after boarding a New York-bound bus, her body discovered months later. Maureen Brainerd Barnes, a Connecticut woman who came to Manhattan searching for work, met the same tragic fate. Years passed, and police found more bodies. Jessica Taylor, whose remains were partially discovered in Manorville in 2003 and later along the same Long Island stretch. Karen Vergata, missing since 1996, now identified through forensic breakthroughs. And then there were the unidentified victims like Peaches, an African-American woman found with her young child, and Asian Doe, a cross-dressing man whose life and death remain a mystery. The sheer volume of evidence has become an overwhelming burden for prosecutors. Tierney's team is tasked with reviewing forensic reports, police interviews, and more than 400 electronic devices seized from Heuermann's home and office. But the clock is ticking, and legal discovery laws require every document, phone record, and video be shared with the defense, regardless of how long it takes to compile. And so the pressure mounts. Tierney admits the timeline is ambitious. "I can't ask people to work for free," he said, pointing to the immense financial and logistical strain. The district attorney is not only up against a defense team funded by taxpayer dollars, but also against a system that expects justice without delay, regardless of cost. As new hearings loom, investigators continue to pursue leads. Could Heuermann have acted alone? Or might others still be out there, tied to the same dark undercurrent that swept these victims to their end? What are the unknown victims, the Asian Doe, and other remains found along Ocean Parkway? Suffolk County detectives have released composite sketches, circulated flyers in multiple languages, and begged the public for answers. Yet, silence lingers. Heuermann, who has pleaded not guilty, appeared in court stone-faced and silent as the legal chess game began. His wife, who filed for divorce shortly after his arrest, was absent from the proceedings. Her attorney revealed that she had relocated to South Carolina, living in a trailer on family property. The strain on the Heuermann family mirrors the emotional toll felt by the families of the victims, families who have waited more than a decade for justice and now stand at the edge of what could be their final hope for closure. The next court date is set for December 17th, and the judge has expressed a desire to set a trial date soon. But even as the legal process inches forward, questions remain. Will the Department of Justice release the funds necessary for the prosecution to proceed without delay? Can the DA's office meet the demands of the case? And perhaps most hauntingly, will the full truth about what happened along Gilgo Beach ever truly come to light? As the countdown to Rex Heuermann's trial begins, the tension inside Suffolk County's legal system is palpable. The weight of decades-old cases, fragmented evidence, and the logistical nightmare of a publicized serial killer trial hang over District Attorney Ray Tierney. Meanwhile, families of the victims, some clinging to hope, others seeking final closure, wait anxiously. Inside the Suffolk County Courthouse, Heuermann's legal team, led by Michael Brown, is already taking an aggressive stance. They argue that it will be nearly impossible to find an impartial jury in a case that has dominated headlines and inspired multiple documentaries. Brown has even suggested severing the charges, splitting the Gilgo Four from the later victims like Jessica Taylor and Karen Vergata, an approach designed to weaken the prosecution's narrative. With mounting discovery requirements, the prosecution faces the daunting task of balancing media attention with judicial fairness. But more is at stake here than just the mechanics of a high-profile trial. Suffolk County's reputation is on the line. The Gilgo Beach murders represent more than a crime spree. They symbolize systemic failures, missed opportunities, and investigative blind spots that plagued law enforcement for years. The task force assembled in 2022 revitalized the investigation, but questions linger. If Heuermann is the killer, how did he escape suspicion for so long? And if he isn't, could other culprits be walking free? The complexity of the case lies not just in the murders, but in the personal lives affected by them. Many of the victims were young women struggling to survive, forced into dangerous circumstances. Megan Waterman was a mother desperate to provide for her child. Amber Costello battled addiction alongside her work as an escort. Each story reflects the broader issue of vulnerable individuals falling through the cracks, left at the mercy of predators. Their deaths were not just personal tragedies, but failures of a society that allowed them to disappear without much notice. For those following the case closely, including the families of the victims, Heuermann's arrest was both a relief and a torment. After more than a decade of unanswered questions, they now find themselves trapped in a new nightmare, the long, arduous process of a legal trial. It's a harsh reality that even with a suspect in custody, closure remains elusive. Adding to the tension is the battle over funding. Without the release of the frozen $13 million, Tierney warns the prosecution may falter. If the Department of Justice does not intervene, critical aspects of the case, expert witnesses, forensic analysis, and discovery management could be jeopardized. It's a budgetary issue, Tierney explained bluntly, underscoring the challenge of fighting a complex legal war with limited resources. Every delay, every misstep could embolden the defense and undermine the credibility of the state's case. At the heart of the defense's strategy is the portrayal of Heuermann as a scapegoat, a family man and architect caught in a whirlwind of accusations. His defense team argues that the overwhelming media coverage has already poisoned the jury pool, making it impossible for him to receive a fair trial. They've hinted at filing a motion for a change of venue, although Brown's jest about moving the trial to Mars highlights the absurdity of finding an impartial panel in a case with this level of infamy. Meanwhile, investigators are still sifting through the mountain of evidence extracted from Heuermann's electronic devices. Over 400 devices were seized from his home and office, holding thousands of pages of records, GPS data, and online searches. Prosecutors believe these digital breadcrumbs connect Heuermann to the Gilgo Four and possibly others, but every piece of evidence must be painstakingly reviewed and shared with the defense. The question weighing on many minds is whether Heuermann acted alone or whether the Gilgo Beach murders are the work of multiple killers. Theories abound, some involving trafficking rings, others pointing to former suspects. But the truth remains buried beneath years of speculation and incomplete investigations. Even with the new forensic advancements, gaps in the timeline leave room for reasonable doubt. And then there are the unidentified victims. Asian Doe, the mother and child known only as Peaches, and others whose identities remain a mystery. Could their deaths be linked to Heuermann? Or do they point to an even larger, more complex web of crime? Law enforcement has ramped up efforts to identify them, circulating flyers in multiple languages and issuing public pleas for information. But without names or histories, these victims remain in the shadows, as anonymous in death as they were in life. For the families of the confirmed victims, the trial is a chance to confront their worst fears and perhaps lay them to rest. The mothers of Melissa Barthelemy and Maureen Brainerd Barnes have publicly expressed their determination to see justice served, attending every hearing, every press conference. But justice, they know, is a slow and painful process. Each new hearing, each delay feels like another wound. The prosecution's case hinges not only on DNA evidence, but also on Heuermann's alleged behavior, his use of burner phones, his chilling internet searches, and his pattern of contacting escorts. These details paint a portrait of a man leading a double life, but they must be presented carefully to avoid prejudicing the jury. The defense will argue that the evidence is circumstantial, that Heuermann's private life, however unusual, does not equate to guilt. The courtroom will become a battleground where forensic experts clash over the validity of DNA methods and digital forensics. Both sides will dissect every detail, what was found, how it was found, and whether it can be trusted. The fate of Rex Heuermann and the long-awaited answers for the victims' families will rest in the hands of a jury tasked with untangling years of evidence, rumor, and suspicion. As December 17th approaches, the stakes continue to rise. Will the Department of Justice release the needed funds in time? Can Tierney's office meet the legal demands of a trial this massive? And if the trial proceeds, will it finally bring clarity, or will it raise even more questions about what really happened along Gilgo Beach? In the end, the question haunting everyone remains, will the full truth ever come to light? And that's where things stand for now. We have a man accused of monstrous acts, a system struggling under the weight of its own bureaucracy, and families still waiting for justice after more than a decade. It's hard to ignore the parallels between the alleged actions of Rex Heuermann and the systems that allowed these crimes to remain unsolved for so long. In both cases, we see manipulation, evasion, and ultimately a failure to protect the most vulnerable. What drives someone like Heuermann, if the allegations are true, to lead such a double life? Outwardly, he was a father, a husband, a respected architect, someone who appeared to embody stability. But beneath that veneer? If the accusations are correct, we're looking at a man who preyed on others' desperation, using his power and anonymity to exploit and destroy. It raises a chilling question. How many people around us, those we think we know, are leading lives just as hidden, just as dark? And then there's the system itself. Prosecutors now scramble to uncover every detail to meet the overwhelming demands of discovery while begging for funds that have been locked away by federal bureaucracy. It's a stark reminder that justice, too, comes with a price tag. How do we balance the need for accountability with the limitations of time, money, and human resources? At what point does the pursuit of justice become another battlefield fought with budgets and court schedules instead of evidence and truth? There are no easy answers. What we do know is this. The victims deserve to be remembered for more than the manner of their deaths. The families deserve closure, not endless hearings and postponed promises, and the public deserves the truth, no matter how unsettling it may be. I'm Tony Brueski. Press that subscribe button to stay updated on this case and all the others we're covering. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and let's keep digging.
In a world where the darkest secrets lie just beneath the surface,
They said it was an accident, but the evidence says otherwise.
where hidden killers roam unnoticed in the shadows.
I think you would definitely be looking at a blend of toxic, very bad narcissistic personality traits, and they will be vengeful and possibly resort to violence.
Join Tony Brueski as he uncovers the truth behind the most chilling cases.
They said it was an accident, but the evidence clearly says otherwise.
Each episode, we dig deep into the minds of those who commit the unthinkable.
To your point on narcissism, he thinks in his own mind how witty he is.
Yeah.
But he lost that jury. I was done with him in 2 minutes.
From unsolved mysteries to infamous crimes.
Geez, you've just talked about how you've taught yourself how to do everything under the sun. I bet you did a YouTube video, how to best kill somebody with a knife.
Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski takes you where few dare to go.
How does someone with such a dark secret go unnoticed for so long?
With multiple new episodes every single day.
We're not just telling stories, we're seeking justice.
Listen now on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski.